China is spying on you. Yes, you. And they know more than you think. From TikTok to spy balloons, the Chinese Communist Party operates one of the world's largest, most powerful, and most dangerous intelligence operations. Thanks to a flurry of recent news stories, people are waking up to China's spying efforts. But beyond that, most people don't know much.
The claims were both sensational and shocking. A Chinese espionage network operating in Australia.
Tonight, intelligence from top-secret U.S. spy planes is providing startling details about China's spy operations.
It's about a Chinese intelligence operation on U.S. soil targeting American politicians with a female operative who had ties to a Democratic congressman.
Now, 2 U.S. senators have called TikTok a Chinese surveillance tool.
When it comes to international spy agencies, most people think about the American CIA, the British MI6, or maybe even Israel's Mossad. But another agency might just be more powerful than all of them, China's MSS. The MSS, or Ministry of State Security, may not have the technological superiority of the CIA, the prestige of MI6, or the take-no-prisoners attitude of the Mossad, but it has something else: unimaginable numbers of potential agents. In a country of more than 1.4 billion people, a country that many classify as the world's largest dictatorship, the MSS has no shortage of recruits. In late 2020, The Australian, a popular conservative-leaning Australian newspaper, published leaked data showing that over 2 million Chinese Communist Party members were secretly embedded in over 79,000 international organizations. These included some of the world's biggest companies, banks, media groups, universities, and perhaps most importantly, government agencies. And who's handling all these potential spies? Well, probably the MSS. Of course, just because someone's a member of the CCP, it doesn't mean they're a spy. Many people choose to join the party simply to advance their careers or help educate their children, and some of those people live abroad. However, the draconian nature of the CCP means that any of them, at any point, could be legally required to collect secret data for the CCP and its intelligence wing, the MSS. So, what are all these potential spies doing? Well, many of them are stealing an incredible amount of data. A US congressional estimate placed the cost of Chinese intellectual property theft at $225 to $600 billion yearly, and that's just in the US. That includes blueprints of fighter jets like the F-35, schematics of helicopters and missiles, as well as information and formulas involving countless patented medicines. But it's not just party members planted inside organizations that are stealing this data, it's also an army of CCP-funded hackers. APT-41, also called Double Dragon or Wicked Panda, is one of many hacking groups with alleged ties to the MSS. APT-41 is estimated to have stolen trillions of dollars in intellectual property from over 30 multinational companies in the manufacturing, energy, and pharmaceutical sectors. On a smaller scale, in 2022, APT-41 was linked to the theft of at least $20 million in COVID-19 relief aid in the US. The group is also often involved in money laundering using video games, maliciously generating in-game currencies and selling them on the black market. But aside from corporate property theft and video game shenanigans, as we previously mentioned, the MSS and other intelligence agencies are also attempting to penetrate Western governments. Christine Fang, a suspected Chinese spy, targeted multiple US officials, including Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell. Fang took part in fundraising activity for Swalwell's 2014 re-election campaign and may have attempted to collect sensitive information from him. However, there's no direct evidence that she succeeded or that Swalwell disclosed any important information to her. In addition, the longtime driver of California Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein was also determined to be an MSS recruit. However, again, there's no evidence that he was successful at gathering any sensitive government information. In addition to these spying efforts, the US Justice Department is also suing billionaire businessman and former Republican Party booster Steve Wynn, alleging that he failed to register as a foreign agent for China when he sought to influence President Donald Trump on China's behalf. Wynn personally delivered a letter from the Chinese government to Trump during a 2017 meeting, asking Trump to reconsider his tariffs on Chinese goods. Wynn had a lot to lose from Trump's trade war on China. That's because one of his most profitable assets is Wynn Macau. Wynn Macau is a giant hotel and casino on the Chinese island of Macau, a popular tourist destination. Whether the MSS was involved in the letter is questionable, but it's certainly possible. However, perhaps most shocking, in 2019, Chinese intelligence even recruited a spy to run in Australia's parliamentary elections. Nick Zhao, a former car dealership owner, was offered $1 million by Chinese spies in order to run as a Liberal Party MP. Zhao, who had a history of fraud, was found dead in a Melbourne hotel room in March 2019. While police were unable to determine how he died, it's thought he may have been killed by an intentional overdose. There's no evidence that China was involved in the death, and it's unclear if the campaign funding was offered by agents from the MSS or another CCP intelligence agency. While governments have been a major target of CCP intelligence activities, universities aren't immune from Chinese spying actions by the MSS and other CCP intelligence groups. In 2020, Charles M. Lieber, the former chair of Harvard University's Chemistry and Chemical Biology Department, was arrested on charges of making false statements to federal authorities regarding his participation in China's Thousand Talents program. The Thousand Talents is a program established by the Chinese government to recruit foreign individuals with access to or knowledge of foreign technology or intellectual property. And the Lieber case is just one example of a much larger spying program instituted by the Chinese government. That's because bribing a single professor doesn't represent the full extent of Chinese intelligence activities on university campuses. And a lot of these intelligence activities are run through organizations called Confucius Institutes. There are around 140 Confucius Institutes at universities worldwide, organizations ostensibly set up to help support Chinese students and facilitate legitimate international research. Unsurprisingly, these groups have been accused by many of facilitating spying and intellectual property theft, often by pressuring students to steal data and send it back to the Chinese government. And while a 2021 US Senate bill tightened controls on federal funding for universities hosting these organizations, they're still operating at many major schools in the US. We should note that these are only the spies and spying programs we know about. There could be countless others lurking within congressional offices, state governors' offices, and federal agencies, and perhaps even within our own intelligence agencies. In 2020, then Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, a former director of the CIA, directly warned state governors that many of them had already been approached by individuals, some of them Americans, secretly representing China's interests abroad. And, as you might expect, many of these individuals might be attempting to help advance China's spying activities within the United States. However, the MSS doesn't limit itself to recruiting overseas Chinese citizens, politicians, and college professors. They also prey on government employees working overseas. In January 2019, Candace Claiborne, a US State Department employee who had previously worked in the American Embassy in Beijing, pleaded guilty to one count of conspiring to defraud the United States. The guilty plea came after prosecutors argued that she had passed sensitive information to the MSS. But perhaps the MSS's most successful endeavor has been to subtly influence worldwide perceptions of China and the CCP. In essence, tricking world governments into thinking that China's rise would be peaceful and, perhaps, even democratic. From its aggressive threats to invade Taiwan, its rapid military expansionism, and its harsh suppression of minorities, Western governments have recently woken up to the threat the CCP poses to the world. But it wasn't always like this. Before the 2017 US trade war with China, and before the COVID-19 epidemic, many Western governments were still on incredibly friendly terms with China. And some, like New Zealand's government, still are. Starting in the early 2000s, a group of MSS-funded organizations and think tanks, including a group called the China Reform Forum, actively worked to subtly manipulate US embassy officials and international journalists. They hoped to convince these individuals of a massive lie. In essence, they hoped to convince them that the CCP only had good intentions, both at home and abroad. Simultaneously, the group was running clandestine intelligence operations in a variety of countries. These often involved attempts to blackmail or corrupt foreign students, professors, and researchers working in China. However, China's spying operations, often spearheaded by the MSS, aren't just focused on Western countries. In fact, China has even tried to infiltrate terrorist groups inside Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. In February 2021, a Chinese national was accused of infiltrating the Haqqani network, a group so dangerous that even the Taliban considers them terrorists. During a meeting of the Afghani Parliment, government officials said that Afghani intelligence agents seized arms, ammunition, and ketamine powder from a network of Chinese nationals operating in the country. Earlier, in 2021, a US presidential intelligence briefing delivered to then-President Donald Trump alleged that Chinese nationals operating in Afghanistan supposedly offered to pay non-state actors to kill US troops. In addition, Chinese spies allegedly attempted to create a fake terror cell inside Afghanistan in order to entrap Chinese Uyghurs into committing crimes. This was all part of the CCP's plan to justify even more severe crackdowns on Uyghurs and other Muslims in China. International groups and governments have claimed that China's mistreatment of its Uyghur population, including sending millions of Uyghurs to re-education camps, has amounted to genocide.
A leaked drone video is sparking new concerns that China's harshly targeting ethnic Muslims. The disturbing footage appears to show hundreds of detainees in Western China bound and blindfolded.
Documents seen by the BBC that are said to have been hacked from Chinese police computers show that Uyghur prisoners in the western region of Xinjiang are shot on sight if they're caught trying to escape.
So it's no surprise Beijing is eager to concoct fake reasons why it needs to enact even harsher measures to suppress the country's Uyghur population. In addition to human intelligence and hacking operations, China's MSS and other Chinese intelligence groups also collect data through the country's growing influence over 5G networks. Companies including Huawei and China National Electronics Import and Export have exported 5G tech to a variety of countries, including Germany, the United Arab Emirates, Ecuador, Zimbabwe, Uzbekistan, Pakistan, Kenya, Venezuela, Bolivia, and Angola, among others. Huawei almost imported its tech to America and other Western countries, but it was stopped by the US government in 2020 via the Clean Network Initiative. In December 2020, the United States announced that more than 60 nations, representing more than 2/3 of the world's GDP and 200 telecom companies, publicly committed to the principles of the Clean Network. The Clean Network stops companies from China and other authoritarian regimes from implementing 5G technologies in member countries. Countries that have aligned with the Clean Network Initiative include 27 of the 30 NATO members, 26 of the 27 EU members, 31 out of the 37 OECD nations, as well as Japan, Israel, Australia, Singapore, Taiwan, Canada, Vietnam, and India. However, China's intelligence operations aren't just limited to hacking and 5G. It's also increasingly using AI-based surveillance systems to gather intelligence at home and abroad. And, unfortunately, American companies and universities like MIT and the Rockefeller Foundation are giving it a helping hand. These organizations have been supporting and funding Chinese surveillance and AI startups like Hikvision, SenseTime, and Megvii. These companies all sell less expensive versions of Chinese state-developed artificial intelligence surveillance systems. Unfortunately, these systems are likely feeding information directly back to the MSS and other Chinese intelligence agencies. Like China's 5G initiatives, however, this investment is being somewhat limited due to many of these companies being declared national security threats and human rights violators by the US government. So, now that we know a bit about what the MSS and other similar Chinese organizations do, who's telling them what to do? It's important to realize that unlike in the United States and other Western countries, the MSS isn't an independent agency with a head appointed by an elected leader. Instead, it's actually a wing of the CCP, meaning that whatever the party wants, the MSS does. And, with the CCP currently in the iron grip of Chairman Xi Jinping, that means whatever he wants. Despite the strong influence of Chairman Xi, the day-to-day operations of the MSS are run by China's Minister of State Security, Chen Yixin, a strong ally of Xi. Chen took office in October 2022, after a long stint helping to enforce Xi's ruthless anti-corruption campaigns. These campaigns removed nearly all opposition to Xi and his policies, both within and outside the CCP. Of course, we couldn't make this video and not mention the Chinese spy balloon recently shot down by the US Air Force. Of course, we don't know the specific Chinese agency that ordered the balloon, or the many others like it, to conduct surveillance operations on US territory. While it could have been the MSS, the operation could also have been conducted by the intelligence wing of the Chinese People's Liberation Army, or PLA, or any number of associated organizations. While the spy balloon caused an international outcry, again, the digital realm is where the MSS and similar agencies truly excel at intelligence collection. And while hacking may be a powerful vector for data collection, TikTok is likely a far more useful one. TikTok is owned by the Chinese conglomerate ByteDance, and, like all Chinese companies, it's required to make all its data available to the Chinese Communist Party at any time. So, despite the protestations of TikTok executives, according to former CIA Director and US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, the data from countless millions of TikTok users flows directly to the MSS. But in addition to simply collecting user data, TikTok is actively attempting to shift the narrative about China, banning users who post anti-CCP videos and actively spreading pro-CCP propaganda on the app. This is partially why the Biden administration is currently in the process of spearheading legislation that could ban TikTok in the United States. While the MSS's use of TikTok, intellectual property theft, and government infiltration are serious issues, we should note that the MSS doesn't solely conduct foreign intelligence, cyber espionage, and hacking operations. In fact, a lot of its efforts go to suppressing dissent at home. Unlike groups like the CIA, the MSS has extensive authority to arrest or detain Chinese citizens. Article 4 of China's Criminal Procedure Law gives the MSS the same authority to arrest or detain people as regular police. Like other elements of the Chinese state security apparatus, it focuses on detaining anyone considered a threat to state security, including actual or potential protesters, members of Christian home churches, and members of the cult-like religious sect Falun Gong. It also hopes to crack down on people associated with the Tibetan independence movement, Uyghurs, supporters of the Taiwan and Hong Kong independence movements, and other pro-democracy activists. When it comes to places that the MSS and other Chinese intelligence agencies collect data, we've mainly discussed Australia, the United States, and Afghanistan. But, like other major intelligence agencies, the MSS and other Chinese intelligence groups operate worldwide. So, if you can think of a country, China probably has spies there. While more than 1 billion potential agents, expert hackers, 5G, and AI make the MSS and other Chinese spy agencies extremely powerful, their biggest power is perhaps their absolute secrecy. While experts at high-level intelligence agencies may have a lot of information, as the public, we actually don't know that much about the MSS's true capabilities. In fact, we often don't even know if foreign intelligence actions have been carried out by the MSS or by one of the myriad other intelligence agencies operated by the CCP, or even by another country entirely. And that mystique gives the MSS and its fellow Chinese spy agencies quite a bit of power, since if we don't know what an intelligence agency is doing, it's much harder to counter it. And that's it for today's video. If you liked the video, like, comment, and subscribe.